Screencast 34, Exploring Auto-Design Group Headers and Footers. So, our previous report with the colors had grouping. Now you remember I was actually grouping by the first letter of the title, but I never corrected the title grouping to just show L instead of, let's say, in this case, the word languish, or G instead of giant goldfish. Let's fix that first. We'll go to the title, and you can see that the label is this, but we were actually grouping on this value, right? And the first thing is we really want to group on the uppercase version of things. So I'll go ahead and use the function called uCase. And I'm going to copy this entire text, copy, and I'm going to paste it into the label here. Just select everything and paste. Okay, everything looks good. And the next thing I want to do is, just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to get rid of this row number. Oops, and I made a mistake actually. You can see that the title didn't actually change, right? The topic I want to introduce in this screencast is, why didn't it change? And that's because where does the value for the language come from? And it actually comes from this header and footer, right? It doesn't come from this. So let's try and see what's in header and footer. So header contains a row and footer is empty. What is the row? Well, there's a field here called title, and you can see the expression right there, which is fields bang title.value. If I set that to my first letter string, let's see what happens. There we go. Now you can see L on top, then G, then T. Okay. Now, auto designs have these headers, and we're going to play with them. But the truth is, before we go too far, I want you to know that if you're trying to do anything complicated with auto design headers and footers, you really should be using precision design. The layout of the header and footer in auto designs are not for groups. Is really not something that lets you have a lot of control. So what I would suggest is just get some basic grouping implemented and then convert to precision design. Let's see though, before we do that, what happens if I add, what can I add? Now I can add an image, which I'll leave alone for now. I'm going to add a field. I'll just call this, we'll leave it field 1, why not? If I go ahead and click preview, there's no observable change. So, where is field 1? Let's go and just set the expression to, oh, I don't know. We'll just put a bunch of 1s there. How's that? And see what happens. Okay, that's where field 1 ended up. And in fact, instead of just 1, why don't I just type in field? I'll type row 1, field 1, so it's obvious in the in the auto design where this thing is coming from. Okay, where would row 2 and how much space do we have here? Actually, this will all allocate, this is using just the same column that's underneath it, right? So you don't have direct control over the width of these rows, of these columns. Let's add another field. This will be field 2, obviously, and we'll set this to row 1, field 2. See what happens. Now we should expect it to see this thing right over the ID, because that's just where it lines up, and it does. Right? And so I actually made a mistake when I said earlier we have no control over the width. Let's see what happens here. There's a tension between the width of, let's say, the ID and the field group that's on top of it in the header. So ID said it was 0.75. Field 2 said it was 1.5. Now obviously you saw the change, that field 1 it went to 1.5. Why is that? Well, let's see. Maybe this just has master control. So let's see if we change it to something smaller. What will happen? Let's make it really small because I just want you to see what's going on here. I'll make it really small. Okay, so it's the maximum between the two, right? Let's prove that by changing this to 1.75, which is, oops, sorry, the ID field I meant. And you should see this, the size of the field, size of the column grow. There you go. So, this matches up to this, just that's positionally where they're at. And the width will be taken from the maximum of the display widths of these, right? So I'll go back to leave this 0.75. And I'll change this to 0.5. So, of course, it'll be 0.75 will be used. Now, the next thing is we have rows, but can we have more than one? And the answer is yes, we can. So here's row 2, and I'd love to be able to, you see what happened? I tried to drag field in there, and it actually moved the field. So what I'm going to do is actually just copy, if I can, and then select there and paste. I'll do the same thing with field 2. Copy and paste, and I'm going to set the expressions so that I can identify where these things are. And refresh the preview, and then you can see here's row 2 field 1. Why did it go over here? That's because it positionally aligns with these items, right? Title, field 1, and title. So what if I wanted a blank thing there? Well, I would just create a field, and let me move it up. There we go. I'll rename this field blank, and I won't have any value there, right? And now you can see it lines up correctly. What if I wanted to count how many things were in the group? Last screencast I showed you how to use the row number, and I showed you the scope. A very similar thing here, but we don't have to worry about the scope so much. Let's go and we'll say that in field 2, which should be, row 2, field 1, we want this one to be replaced with the count. So I'll edit the expression, and I'll say, under common functions, under aggregate, we'll say count rows. And there are several overloads. I'm just going to leave it like that and see what happens. So it says 3 there, which is correct, then 2 there, which is correct. So you see we didn't really need to say anything about the scope, right? Now it just says the number. If I wanted to say a string, then I'm going to have to go here and let's try this. Expression count equals plus, and there's a conversion function, which is CSTR, right? Convert this, whatever it is, to a string. Otherwise, it'll be an int, and I can't add it to the other string. So count equals 3, right? And there is a row height property here, which I'll try setting to a big value, 1 inch. See what happens. You see now how much space is allocated? How about I set both of these down to 0.19? It should be a bit tighter now. Okay. And there are also footer rows. And in fact, I may be able to copy, right-click, copy one of these rows and just move it to the footer, or copy to the footer. Now you'll see at the bottom of these, I have, see, count again. What if instead of count, I wanted to sum something? Let's take a look at another aggregate function here. So let's say I want to sum. Let's say I want to sum these IDs. I know those are. It's ridiculous to sum IDs, but they're numbers, right? So I can sum them. So I'll go to row 2, field 2 down here, and let's try setting the expression to another aggregate function called sum, of course. And what do I want to sum is with these fields, and I'll sum ID. There's going to be an error, and that's expected. I'm going to show you the error and how to fix it. So it says the value expression, this is a warning. So you can go down here, you'll see what happened in the report. It says hash error. The value expression for the text box 18, uses a numeric aggregate function on data that is not numeric. Numeric aggregate functions, sum, average, standard deviation, blah, 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 can only aggregate numeric data. What does that mean? Well, all that means is because even though we were seeing a number, that's actually just a string that's being displayed there. So we need to convert it to a number before we try to do the sum. And there is a conversion function, of course, called cint, just like there was cstr. Cint. So this will convert that value to an integer. And I'm safe in my example here because none of these IDs are bad. And you can see now we have a sum of these values, right? So I've shown you how to use in AutoDesign, how to add fields, or columns I should say, to the header and footer, how to add more rows to the header and footer, how to control the widths of the columns. And I've shown you how the fields in the header contend with the fields that are in data to determine the column width. And finally, we've played a little bit with aggregate functions in these groups and how to use them in the header and footer. And again, I'm going to end this screencast just saying one more time that if you want to do anything sophisticated or just visually pleasing with groups, anything that's more than just trivial, you really need to use precision designs to get the look you want. Okay, and we will cover that in future screencasts, but we have quite a bit more to go with auto designs. So bear with me and we'll get there eventually. Okay, see you next screencast.